You might have been trying to get more power in your golf swing.
Yes.
There's lots on YouTube about jumping and pushing off the ground. But in trying to attempt that, you might find that your dispersion goes off the charts. You might be
Yes.
hitting it off the planet. And we see this quite a lot where people have come along and they've been trying to pop and using a push-off, and it's just exaggerating their already flawed release pattern. So basically it just makes what they're doing worse, and therefore they go the opposite way and tighten up again, and then potentially go into trying to keep the head still, stay down, and do the complete opposite to get control.
I would say part of the reason for that is because their release pattern has adapted to the body action that they're currently using. So if we change the body action, often what we find is that a release pattern needs some work.
Exactly, so the two go hand in hand. The end of the chain, that's the release pattern, the end of the kinetic chain. We're looking at the driver of this chain, but we have to look at the whole chain, and that's what we're going to do today. We've already explored slingshot, so if you follow the link to the video on slingshot, that's going to give you a feel of the end of the chain, the release pattern George is talking about. What we're doing is we're going into the engine of the swing today. We're going into what is driving this kinetic chain. How are we leveraging the ground in the best way to allow that slingshot to happen? Because we've got to just facilitate the slingshot. We've got to supercharge it with the forces needed to get the speed we want. So George, we often see people stay down. They often say, I'm trying to stay in posture, cover the ball.
Keep your levels, all these kind of phrases.
Just if you could explain potentially the pitfalls that could create.
Well, kind of just denying them the opportunity to actually generate big forces from the ground, because part of generating big forces from the ground is loading and unloading vertical force. And if we are then trying to stay down, I'm going to exaggerate for effect, but if we're trying to stay down, we're probably not going to be able to utilize the ground in an effective way to generate the forces required for the speed that we're actually trying to work on.
Definitely, and also we are reducing the space we've got to actually let the levers react to the body. We're becoming more enclosed, we're losing space, and the levers are collapsing, as opposed to the levers should be extending, releasing off the body. The pivot, which is the body, is throwing the levers, utilising that momentum that we've created, transferring it through to the club head.
It does make logical sense, because when we ask why people are trying to keep their level or stay down or something like that, there is some logic in the answer that most of them give, in that they're trying to reduce variables, essentially. They're trying to maybe reduce degrees of freedom or take planes of motion out of the action, because they think more planes of motion or more variables means potentially more varied outcomes, whereas actually the body is so adept in organising itself in relation to the task that actually the more freedom we give the body, the better able it is to actually achieve the task, because we haven't placed many heavy constraints on it before we've even started. So actually allowing more variability will, over time, with some refinement and some feedback and some practice, actually bring in dispersion and give you better control.
Exactly, so removing limitations to allow the body's natural mechanics to take place, because these patterns already exist. You already possess these movements. You tap into these movements intuitively every day without even thinking about it, and you apply yourself to other sports and learn other sports, generally just in a very organic fashion, whereas in golf, traditionally we've been taught to think about our movement, and we see it every day. People who come for lessons have got such a technical kind of approach to how they're moving. They're talking to us like golf coaches instead of players. We want to find the player in you, so we've got to just go into that more natural, kind of intuitive, curious, inquisitive part of the mind, where we're just exploring and allowing ourselves to, like George just said, naturally adapt. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to remove these physical constraints and let the body just perform. This is, and here it comes, there's the training aid. This exercise digs right down into the origin of what is driving this pattern. And so without further ado, let's cut to the chase and get
Marcus has been dying for a lesson from me for a while, but on this occasion I'm going to be the student.
We're just going to take the medicine ball and we're going to just swing it from side to side.
Like the wrecking ball.
As per the wrecking ball. So notice when George is swinging this, it's not a pendulum action, so it's not all in one. So if you just show us an all in one action there, where it's all driven, everything's moving together. In fact, it's more upper body. What George is doing here is actually starting to shift from side to side and create more of a lag. So the medicine ball is following him. Look, he's leading the action.
And just as I did that, I could feel the effortlessness. I could do this all day. I could not do this all day. I can feel my back starting to go already. So I'll go back to the effortlessness.
So look at what's introduced into the pattern. The feet, the ankles, the knees, the hips, the spine. Everything's moving and it's all harmonised in terms of a sequence. So it's an effortless transfer of momentum. And he's using his body weight. So now we've got this wrecking ball action, which is going to lead into the pop. Okay, because a lot of people are trying to get power. We see it all the time. They swing to the top and then they go for the power. They're essentially going into the vertical force phase way too early. They're trying to push off way too early. And that just completely exaggerates the release.
Everything's happening at once. It's very difficult when everything's happening at once to sense what's going on because it's one just big blur of feedback to the brain. Whereas when we're in a more elongated, stretched out sequence, at least that's what it feels like to me when I'm performing that exercise, there's lots more ability to actually digest consciously what has just taken place.
Contrary to what people believe, when more parts are moving, the body's getting a heightened sense of where it is in space because all these body parts are providing feedback to the brain in terms of spatial referencing. So all these receptors in all these joints are firing back information to create a map so the body recognises where it is. Then we can start to tighten up the system, we can start to optimise it. But first of all, we've got to explore where we are. So George is feeling more of a heightened sense of how he's moving, which we can then start to refine. So it's the refinement that people are trying to refine their action too early. They're trying to create a precise action. First, we need to enrich our awareness with bigger movements, and then we start to go through the refinement process. So the wrecking ball's a perfect exercise to start with, but we've got to then tap into the vertical. Now, notice where the wrecking ball takes us into the downswing. It's a drop. So notice there's a drop now. There's the drop. Okay, and George is perfectly primed when he's dropping. He was talking about the loading, unloading phase earlier. He's primed, loaded, i.e. weighted into the floor, ready to push off. And this is the difference between what a lot of people are doing and what we should be experiencing, is the hands and the club travelling down as we push up. What tends to happen is we push off, and this releases, and now the club's swinging up, the arms are collapsing, so the hands are coming up as we're pushing off the floor. And the low point's so far back, there's so much dynamic loft, you can appreciate this. This is not probably going to be a very efficient strike, if I'd managed to strike it at all. And the path gets thrown off. It gets thrown left, because all the levers are collapsing, we're pushing off and rotating. The body actually stops because once you've gone vertical, it actually restricts rotation and the hands take over and the club goes left.
And notice when Marcus was just doing all those demonstrations of the early release, how much he was on his back foot and just pivoting around his back foot, which is going to send your path, your swing direction, even more to the left as right-handers.
Show us the exercise, George. Let's see the actual now, the push-off, and I'm going to go this way, just in case the ball does get thrown forward, but George is trying to throw the ball down. The golf swing is not a throw, because that will probably encourage more of an upward action with the whole body. We're not throwing, we're actually releasing this way, down. The force we're applying is this way, but we're pushing off the ground. So you're pushing off and swinging down, i.e. hands going down, we're pushing off and going up. That is quite a different sensation. Let's explore it, George.
And that is part of what I was talking about earlier, is where we've got all of these movements, but perhaps not in the configuration. So it might be a weird experience for some of you to feel your hands and arms going down as the lower body is extending.
So we often get asked some very specific questions in these tutorials. So George, where are you trying to throw that ball specifically?
Down in front of where my ball would be in terms of ball position.
So lever-wise here, and then as we're pushing off, this can happen later. So let's do a few of these, George, and let's just get the...
So starting with the wrecking ball, coach.
And then, yeah.
Starting with this, and then when I'm ready, I'm gonna load and then throw.
Yeah. Good. Fantastic. And again, let's go face onto the camera so they can see this face on, George.
So I'm feeling that loading into my lead side there, and the ball is still way back in the swing when I'm ready.
Awesome. Brilliant. Now we're not trying to roll it in a particular direction. In fact, it's probably going to get thrown away. Notice what happens when George tries to throw it away. So say you are a slicer of the golf ball, okay? So you're used to swinging your arms this way. How do we create the body motion to match the desired arm action? How does this all fit together? What we can do now is throw the ball down but away. So we're going to now feel what it's like to load, to drop and pop with a hand path travelling away from us. So George, if you go into more of a...
So if I go down the line like this, it would...
And then throw it towards me, but into the floor, but in my direction. Brilliant. And if we do that again, face onto the camera, what I want you to notice is that George is opposing the direction he's throwing the ball into the floor with his body. He's opposing the motion with his body. He's pushing back off the floor and away from the direction his arms are travelling. He's going back and up and the arms are going down and out. So it's a counterbalancing movement.
I was just going to say that. It feels very, very stable.
Look at the stability, yeah. It's counterbalancing. So not only are we using vertical for power, we're using vertical for stability. So if you find that your finish is a little bit wobbly, unbalanced, the chances are you're not really controlling the inertia of the club very well. It's all out of control because it's getting thrown early and then you're having to tension, and that's when we see finishes like this. The tension is an effort to control the golf club, to control the strike, but also to maintain balance. So this exercise is going to help your dynamic balance throughout the whole motion as well, particularly the most critical point when you're pushing off and releasing the golf club. The body, the nervous system needs to feel safe, and if it knows it can do this with dynamic balance, it's going to give you free license to just explore it further and really optimize it and ramp up the forces and the speed. Awesome. So now with a golf club, what I'd suggest you do is take a divot in the direction you intended with the ball. So we've got a divot to the right, slightly, and we've got, you can see the counterbalancing action. Lovely. What a swing, eh? Let's see it with the golf ball.
I can feel here, just having done that exercise, I absolutely want to, even setting up to the ball, I can feel myself loading and unloading and just getting a nice feel for that. Now I'm ready, I settle into the shot and go.
Beautiful. Look at that. Called it, played it, as ordered.
Like that.
We're generating the feelings, and then while we've got the feeling, while we recognise it, while it's fresh in the bones, we pick up the club and keep the motion going. Notice George went straight into the wrecking ball, so he's transferring those feelings into movement with the club, and then it's an easier transition into the golf swing.
That actually, I was very aware of what I was feeling through that golf shot, and to be honest, it felt very similar to with the medicine ball, only obviously this was a bit lighter. Felt like I could get more speed than with the medicine ball. Taking
Thought away from the whole swing and just relating to feelings. Just relating to feelings. If you don't have a medicine ball, and George was about to use the golf club, which is ideal, you can use a karate chop kind of hold, and you could even throw the club into the floor.
Don't want to break Marcus's club here.
You could throw it. It won't do any damage as long as you don't be careful about it bouncing up. Or you can simulate throwing it, and it's recognising not just the movement but the timing, and that's what these exercises provide. Movement, not just movement awareness, but timing as well. Lovely. And then you'll end up like this, hopefully. Ripping it. So guys, hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Perfect demo and explanation. And these are all just suggestions to explore what is essentially a whole body motion, but sometimes those blind spots can be removed. We're not aware of those, but this might open up a different level of awareness, which suddenly opens up other movements and everything starts to join together, and it unlocks movement patterns which are there waiting to break out. So guys, hopefully this helps. Let us know in the comments how you're getting on. Any suggestions, put them in the comments, because that's going to help us with future tutorials to help you get better. Thanks guys.